My real dad is Albert Wilkerson. Like, that's who I call Dad, and that's all that matters to me. I do not talk to Ruth Ann or Larry anymore. Neither does Isaiah, and neither do, other siblings.
You don't necessarily have a relationship with them where you view them as mom and dad.
No, I call them Larry and Ruth Ann. If I was asked, I would definitely say that yes, I do consider myself to be black.
All right, she considers herself to be black. Welcome aboard. It's Malzberg panel time on this Friday. David Swerdlick, assistant editor at PostEverything at the Washington Post and WashingtonPost.com. And Larry Elder, radio host of The Larry Elder Show, author of Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. And you can check him out at LarryElder.com. All right, so this woman, the head of the NAACP chapter of Spokane, Washington, who's a civil rights activist as well, teaches Africana Studies at East Washington University. Here she said she considered herself to be African American. She was asked that in another interview I saw, and she said to that very question, I don't understand the question. Turns out, according to her parents, she is white. She's white. I mean, she's not black. And she's been saying all along and still says she's black. So, Larry, tell me what the heck's going on here.
What do her parents know? They're just her parents. What this shows you is just how bad is it for minorities in America when you have white people pretending that they're black to get advantages. How bad is it when Ward Churchill and Elizabeth Warren claim that they're Native Americans when they're not? How bad is it? It means it's not that bad.
David?
Look, as a relatively light-skinned black person who is sometimes mistaken for other ethnicities, Latino, Middle Eastern, I'm choosing to see the humor in this. Clearly, she got this position with the NAACP under fraudulent circumstances, Steve, but in the bigger picture, look, based on what we know, she really seemed to want to be black, so I don't know how I can be mad at her right now.
But the question is, why does she want to be black? If being black has all these negatives, you're followed around in a department store, you're pulled over by cops for no reason, you don't get a job because you're black. If it's that bad, and Eric Holder tells us that racism is pernicious in America today, if it's that bad, why would somebody pretend to be black?
Yeah, but Larry, we can have a whole separate discussion, right, about how bad racism is in our society in general. Let's have that discussion. But maybe she just identifies, clearly she went about it in this sort of bizarre way, but maybe she identifies with something about black people, what she perceives to be black culture, about wanting to be someone who she apparently was not. And as an individual, I just find it hard to get indignant about that. To your point about whether society is that bad. I don't think you can draw, let's have that debate, but I don't think you can draw any conclusions about race and racism in America in general based on this one woman's story, other than that it's just a fascinating story.
I think you can. I think you can argue that there are advantages to being minority. It's easier to get into college or university, easier to get a job. In some cases, Elizabeth Warren lied and told Harvard she was Native American, but for that she probably wouldn't have gotten that gig. My point is that the race card can be used as a shield and as a sword for advantages.
Look, I don't even really believe in the expression playing the race card. I think that is just one of these things that political conservatives frequently throw out there to throw off an otherwise sort of worthwhile discussion about what we're talking about race in America. But even if you take the garden variety definition of quote unquote playing the race card, this doesn't fall into that category.
David Swerdlick, Larry Elder, we're coming back. Don't go away, folks.
I don't really want to talk about the gay issue, except maybe you can get the answer for this question. What position can a person take who has no animosity toward gay people, but believes in the traditional definition of marriage that would be acceptable?
That is such a brilliant question. That was part of an interview on CNN. Breonna Keeler badgering Ben Carson. The whole interview, all she wanted to know was, do you think gays are discriminated against? Do you think gays are ever? And he answered it a million ways, and she still wanted to know. And she said, you're a presidential candidate. You have to be ready to take questions and answer them. Wow. Joining us once again on the panel, David Swerdlick, assistant editor at the PostEverything at the Washington Post. Hey, what's coming up in your section this weekend?
So, Steve, the front of the Outlook section, we've got a great article by Jill Filipovich, who writes regularly for Cosmo. She's talking about the word abortion, the idea, the issue, but also the word, and how feminists and how pro-choice activists are reclaiming the word and not shying away from it, not using substitute words like pro-choice, and really sort of, if you will, leaning in to the idea that there's nothing to be afraid of with the term.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, and Larry Elder, of course, hosted Larry Elder's show on radio. And all right, so let me start. Let's start with you, Larry, on this. You know, they got Ben Carson pigeonholed into being this, whatever, this nut.
He's a hater.
And this
He's a
is
hater.
right. And this is all they're ever going to ask about. His question back to her was so brilliant. You know, what could I possibly say? What could someone who believes in traditional marriage and has no animosity towards gay people possibly say to satisfy you morons? Basically, is what he was saying.
It was a brilliant answer. You know that the Southern Poverty Law Center characterized Ben Carson as a hater because of his position on same-sex marriage and on gays. And I'll tell you something. It wasn't very long ago that somebody named Barack Obama had exactly the same point of view. Now, all of a sudden, the point of view that was okay when Obama said it is now deemed to be hateful. This is bizarre, but I thought what Ben Carson did was a brilliant, brilliant response.
David, is it possible? I know you don't represent the left, don't get me wrong, but is it possible for the left, the media on the left, to accept someone who says, I'm in favor of traditional marriage, without calling them a bigot?
Look, I actually disagree with Larry that I don't think it's a brilliant answer, and here's why. Look, as you know, Steve, I've written a lot about Ben Carson. I interviewed him in January for The Root before I came over to the Post. I've talked to him. I've talked a lot about him. Look, if you're running for president and you oppose same-sex marriage, there is a straightforward answer, which is same-sex marriage does not coincide with or comport with or mesh with my personal beliefs, my Christian beliefs. But
you said that many times.
But wait, here's the rest of the answer, Larry. But I also understand that the issue has changed in our society, and I also understand that the 14th Amendment promise of equal protection applies to gay marriage as well as
That's your opinion.
That's your opinion. The court hasn't said that. The court hasn't said that, David.
I'm telling you, that is my opinion. I'm also telling you, answering Dr. Carson's question of how you would answer that to the satisfaction.
You're answering it the way you want it answered as a left-wing person. I'm sorry. He gave the answer that he thought. What can I say that supports traditional marriage that causes me not to be called a hater? Give me that answer. Give me those words. That's
Larry,
what he said. I thought was brilliant.
Let me ask you a question, because you're calling me left wing. What is conservative about denying two people who love each other and want to be married the right to be married and start a family? And having the government prevent that? What is conservative?
The conservative position is the same position that Dick Cheney took well before Obama did, and that it should be decided on a state-by-state basis. I voted twice in favor of same-sex marriage in California. Both times I lost. I can live with that. Let the state decide it.
So you're making a 10th Amendment argument, and I'm making a 14th Amendment argument, an equal protection argument. There is no equal protection if gay and lesbian people can't get married, have the marriage rights that straight people have.
David, that's the issue right now in the lap of the Supreme Court, and I believe that they're going to rule in my favor and not yours. But we'll see.
All right, so I'm glad we had this discussion. I didn't want to get sidetracked on that totally. I got to tell you that. All right, what about the judge, guys? Real quick, and we'll start with Larry. We got a minute, 30 seconds each. The judge in Cleveland. It's non-binding. Should the judge have weighed in on that Cleveland shooting of Tamir Rice and say there's reason here for probable cause to prosecute, or should he have shut up and waited until the grand jury weighed in?
Steve, I lived in Cleveland for 17 years. I was unaware that you could go to court and bypass the prosecutor and get a ruling like that. But the ruling is non-binding, so as far as I'm concerned, it's a waste of time. All it's going to do is add a lot of energy to the idea that the cops murdered this 12-year-old. When in my opinion, there's a lot of fog there. We have no idea what happened. Apparently, he warned the kid 3 times.
Right.
The pellet gun did not have a little tip on it.
Right.
It's supposed to have to indicate it's a toy gun. So as far as I'm concerned, all this is going to engender more hatred towards cops.
David, final word.
Look, legal process-wise, I am not sure whether the judge should or shouldn't have intervened. In terms of whether there is probable cause and due process, ultimately for these officers, I will say this: in most of these incidents we've seen over the last year,
5 seconds.
Part of the problem for prosecution has been overcharging. Right? Look,
All right, guys, got to go. Thank you both. See you soon. Coming back, Jed Babin.